You've probably heard the phrase, glue your mix together, but what does it actually mean? And what's the best way to do it? That's exactly what this video is about. I'm gonna give you 3 easy techniques to glue your mix together, and I'll give you some simple steps to follow in order to get that smoother, more cohesive sound. Plus, I'll give you some insights on the pros and cons of each method so you'll know the best one to choose for whatever mix you're working on. Let's get started. So first off, we have to understand what it actually means to glue the mix together. When you hear the term glue, it essentially means reducing the dynamic range, which makes all of the elements of a mix sound closer together. So if we listen to this mix we're working on, we can actually see that the drums are extremely loud and the rest of the instruments are much softer. It's a very dynamic 2-track mix. So with this track we're going to work with today, we're going to work on reducing that dynamic range to tuck the drums in and bring the rest of the elements out. And that's really all it means when we talk about gluing the mix together. So now that we understand what it means to glue a mix together, let's go through the 3 different techniques. One way is by using a traditional glue compressor. You could use this on just the 2-track beat, you could use it on the entire mix bus, or maybe just a subset of instruments. Whatever you want to glue together, you can use a glue compressor to do it. Now this is great for several reasons. If you have the right compressor, it can make the track sound fuller and bigger. The glue compressor in X-Rack Pro is one of my personal favorites. It's just really punchy and tight, and it just elevates the entire track. Take a listen to it here on this 2-track beat. So that has worked incredibly well on this track. We now have a much more glued together sound, and we didn't crush or smash the transients. It still sounds very punchy. Now, one trick when you're doing this, try reducing the input gain going into the compressor. A lot of times a 2-track beat or a mix bus can already be very loud going into the compressor, and that doesn't give the compressor a lot of room to work with. So we want to give the compressor a little breathing room. We want it to be able to work a little harder, so we can pull this input down to achieve that. So you notice how we were able to get a lot more compression, and it actually sounded punchier when we did it this way. So play around with that as you're setting your glue compressor. Try different input settings to get different results. Now there can be some drawbacks to this type of compression, and we'll talk about those in just a minute. But for now, let's move on to the other techniques for gluing a mix together. The second way to glue a mix together is with a clipper. A clipper works by clipping the transients, effectively removing them, and instead saturating in a much more analog way. And a good clipper will actually do this very musically so that it actually sounds better when it's being clipped like this. In X-Rack Pro, we have 2 great clippers to choose from. We have a soft clipper and the hard clipper. Now these will produce slightly different sounds. The soft clipper is going to be crunchier, a bit more analog sounding, and the hard clipper is going to be punchier. To use them, just select the one you want, and then I like to use this trim knob up here to drive into the clipper. Let me show you what I mean. So you can hear as we drive into it, we're gluing the mix together significantly, even more so than maybe the glue compressor was doing. But we're also introducing a little bit of that saturation on the kicks and snares, the transients. And actually it's working really well in this particular mix. It sounds fatter and bigger as a result. But if you're not wanting to hear that kind of saturation, you can always adjust how much you're pushing into the clipper. Let's move on to the third technique to glue a mix together, and that is with multiband dynamic processing. Now what's special about the multiband dynamics in X-Rack Pro is that it's applying both downward or normal compression, as well as upward compression. And this actually makes it an incredible glue compressor. Because it's reducing the dynamic range from both sides, we can actually get away with using a little bit less of it and getting a more glued together result. Now, this can be used to extreme effects. And if you've ever used OTT, you know exactly what I'm talking about. This is what it sounds like if we just pull the multi-slider up, and this is exactly like OTT in Ableton. So it can completely crush the sound like that. And in some cases, it's incredibly pleasant and it's exactly what you want it to do. But for our purposes here, using this as a multi-band glue compressor, we want to adjust it a bit. And that's why we have these amount per band controls, as well as these crossover frequencies. So we can really dial in exactly how much glue we want on each band, as well as where we want those bands to be. So here's how I might set this one up. So as I'm setting these amounts, I'm listening to each band and trying to determine how much glue do we need in that band. In the lows, we don't need very much at all. We want to let that sub and kick breathe a bit. The mids, we definitely wanted a bit more glue because we want to pull that snare in and bring those instruments up. And in the highs, I actually liked the little bit of excitement that it was adding. So we're going to keep that one a little bit higher. But now I can fine tune the overall amount with the multi-slider. Now, of course, I can also play around with the crossover frequencies. So if I drag this low crossover up, it means we're going to be applying this percentage below this frequency. So this might also open up the lows a bit more if I push this up. So you can hear how much more tucked in that kick is, and it's still incredibly natural sounding. It's almost like we went into the actual mix and adjust the level. Of course, we just have a 2-track beat in this case, so this is the next best thing. And that's one of the benefits of multi-band glue compressing, because we have a lot more control to say exactly where we want that glue to be applied and exactly how much. So now that you've seen the 3 techniques to glue a mix together, let's talk about the pros and cons of each method so you can choose the best one for the mix you're working on. The glue compressor is great for adding thickness and body, but sometimes if you apply too much, it can start to pump. Let me show you what I mean. So you can hear when you apply an extreme amount of glue compression, the drums are going to kind of pump the compressor and it's not going to sound quite as natural. Now, a clipper, we already kind of talked about one of the things that can happen there, which is it can start to crunch. And if we push it too hard, it'll definitely add too much distortion. It actually sounds really cool on this particular mix, but sometimes you might want a cleaner sound. And of course, in that case, using just a clipper might not be the right choice. A multiband process is probably the most precise way, but it's also the most likely to change the character of your mix. It might be for the better, but in some cases, you might not want to change the character. You might want to keep it a little bit more organic to what the original mix was. So now that you know the pros and cons of each technique, the real secret is you can apply all 3 in different amounts to achieve even better results. For example, on this mix, I might use a tiny bit of glue compression because I like the size that it brings to the lows. I might apply a little bit of clipping, maybe a little bit more clipping because I like how that is crunching, and then maybe finish it off with a little bit of multiband processing as well, just to give it that final bit of polish. So you can hear how instantly this mix glues together. It sounds so much more cohesive and a lot bigger as a result. And that came from using all three of these techniques. So experiment with whatever track you're working on. You might need more clipping if you like that punchier, grittier sound. Or you might want to just apply compression and multiband compression for a cleaner, more precise sound. Take one more listen before and after X-Rack Pro, applying all of these techniques on this track. If you enjoyed this video, leave us a comment, give it a like, and subscribe for more tutorials like this one. And as always, happy mixing.